Good evening, and welcome to the City of Dublin Planning and Zoning Commission. You can join the meeting in person at 5555 Perimeter Drive and also access the meeting via the live stream on the city's website. We welcome public participation, including public comments on any cases. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Beal, roll.
Ms. Harder? Here. Mr. Way?
Here.
Mr. Shanag?
Here.
Mr. Supalak?
Here.
Here. Here.
There are no minutes prepared to be approved this evening, correct? No minutes. I just need a motion to accept documents into the record.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Beal?
Mr. Shanag?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
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 Ms. Harder?
Yes.
The Planning and Zoning Commission is an advisory board to City Council when rezoning and platting of property are under consideration. In such cases, City Council receives recommendations from the Commission. In other cases, the Commission has the final decision-making responsibility. Anyone who intends to address the Commission on any of the administrative cases must be sworn in. Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of jump here to the consent agenda. Do we swear them at this point?
So on here, you can do the consent agenda cases, and then after that is the swearing in.
Got it. There are two cases eligible for consent agenda this evening. Case number 2, Ohio Hit Dogs Baseball at 7007 Discovery Boulevard. Case number 22-037 CU Conditional Use. And case number 3, Bridge Park, Block G at 6620 Mooney Street, number 22044 MSP Master Sign Plan. Does anyone wish to remove these cases from the consent agenda?
I have a few questions on case 3, signage. Sorry. I guess my one question, as we read through it, is it seems a little bit ambiguous on some of the rules and a little bit loose on some of the rules. So I didn't know if the commission felt the same, and maybe that one should be tabled.
Well, I think if there are questions about that particular application, then the thing would be to pull it from the consent agenda. We'll swear people in and can do the presentation on the case, and any questions then can be addressed.
Got it. So we'll pull case number 3 off the consent agenda and review it later tonight. The agenda order is typically determined at the beginning of the meeting by the chair. The rules and regulations of the Planning and Zoning Commission state that no new agenda items are to be introduced after 10:30. Forgive me, I didn't let anybody else have a moment. Any other consent? Okay. Swearing in of witnesses. If you're anyone intending to address the commission on any cases this evening, please stand and raise your right hand. Thank you all. Answer in the affirmative. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony to this commission? Yes. Thank you. Now help me, Jenny,
Yeah, so the consent agenda, so if you want to, someone can just make a motion for.
motion to approve.
Yeah, just a motion to approve the consent agenda, which will approve case number 2, Ohio Hit Dogs Baseball, conditional use.
Got it.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Beal?
Mr. Shanag?
Yes.
Mr. Schneer?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Ms. Harder?
Yes.
Mr. Supalak?
Yes.
Mr. Way?
Yes.
Case number 3 is moved over. Am I good to
Right, so
jumping to section 8 now? New cases.
we could do number 3 first, that was removed from the consent agenda.
Okay. We will take the cases in number 3, Bridge Street Block G Master Sign Plan, followed by Dublin Village redevelopment, followed by Higher Ground Montessori. Mr. Hounshell. Forgive me, I have one more I have to get in there. This application is a request for amendments to a previously approved master sign plan for Bridge Park to include Block G. The 2.88 acre site is zoned Bridge Street District, Sciota River neighborhood, and is northeast of the intersection of Mooney Street with the Bridge Park Avenue. Case number 22-44 MSP.
Perfect. Well, good evening. It's great to be with you all tonight. Before you is an amendment to a master sign plan for the Bridge Park development, specifically Block G. So Block G is highlighted in yellow on your screen. It is a part of the Bridge Park development and is located west of Block C, south of Block H, and north of Block F. The site is defined by Toller Ridge Drive, Dale Drive, Mooney Street, and Bridge Park Avenue. So the master sign plan for Bridge Park has been before the commission previously. Blocks A, B, C, and D have all been approved between 2020 and 2016. This amendment is to allow for Block G to be included in the master sign plan. And just to go through some existing signs that have been approved in line with the master sign plan in the various blocks, you can see examples of existing projecting signs, placemaking art signs, as well as canopy edge signs, wall signs, and temporary tenant leasing window covers. So Block G has been approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. It does feature 3 buildings. G1 being the southernmost is a retail and office building. G2 is a parking structure with 3 artist studios. And building G3 is a residential apartment structure. A brief overview of the master sign plan. Buildings G1 and the artist studios of G2, they feature signs that are typically consistent with other blocks, and they follow the regulations matrix that's listed in the master sign plan. The other signs located on the parking garage, G2, there'll be 2 parking garage marquees and entry and exit wayfinding signs. And then the Theodore apartment, building G3, features a placemaking art sign and 1 canopy edge sign. Shown on the screen are a list of the permanent and temporary sign types that are permitted per the master sign plan. These are consistent through all of the blocks. One condition that staff has is that the applicant would select alternate precedent images for each of these sign types, as many of the signs are outdated that are shown in the plan, and there have been a lot more approved signs within the district that could be added to this plan. So shown on the screen is the general regulations matrix. These are the requirements for all of the permitted signs within this master sign plan. Again, these requirements are consistent with other blocks, so I won't dig too deep into these. And it also includes signs with special conditions. So the south elevation of building G1 is shown on the screen. These sheets are consistently shown throughout each block. And this is really just to show the possible locations or permitted locations for each sign type when tenants do come through in the future. So the way the master sign plan will work is that the Planning and Zoning Commission will approve the document which outlines the regulations within this specific block. The landlord would approve the signs as the tenants come through, and then they would submit through building standards for their permanent signs while working with us to finalize the design and location. These are not the final location of signs, There is flexibility to be located away from these proposed locations, but those do require approval from both the landlord, which would be Crawford Hoying, and city staff. And there are conditions that are applied to these sheets specifying that the final sign locations require both city and landlord approval, and that the placemaking art sign locations depicted are regulatory, including number and location, and then that upper story tenants are required, or would only be permitted one sign, which would be regulated by the landlord. And this is the east elevation. These are the two most prominent elevations which show the most signs for this building. This is building G2. You can see the east elevation, which is the 3 artist studios. These will fall under the regulatory matrix, and then the 2 marquee signs, which are 25 square feet, and they are consistent with previously approved parking signage within the district. And then building 3, G3, which is the apartment building. This features 2 signs, which is a 5.3 square foot canopy edge sign and the 35 square foot placemaking art sign. Staff is asking that the applicant work with us to provide the final sign fabrication details prior to submitting for the sign permit. Staff has reviewed this application to all applicable master sign plan criteria and are recommending approval with the 5 conditions shown on the screen. I'm happy to answer any questions there may be for staff. Otherwise, our applicant is here as well. Thank you.
Questions for staff?
There you go. Thank you for the further explanation. It helps tremendously. I think knowing that they're not asking for anything additional, I think my concern with this, and as you say, it's falling within our already approved criteria, but there seem to be a lot of variation in sign types as presented in this packet. But you're saying that all those sign variations fall within the previously approved variances for those signs.
Correct. So there are no new sign types provided with this block. They're all consistent with blocks A, B, C, and D.
Okay. And then the statement about the not restricting logo size or logo colors, that's consistent with previously approved as well.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Zach, will we see, just recap us again. So we're potentially, are we looped in on the signs when they come to fruition?
So the master sign plan, once you approve that allows flexibility for staff and the landlord to approve
For the
final
for the
signs.
tenants?
Correct.
Got it, thank you. Do we have an applicant here who would like to say anything? Welcome. Name and address.
Matt Starr, 6640 Riverside Drive. I think this is actually the 6th time we've been here, not 4 times. Process seems to work pretty well. We typically go through 2 or 3 review processes with the tenant before, they even submit to the city. So by that point, and we've got a pretty good rhythm going. We were here a couple years ago. It was really complicated when we first put it into play. We've simplified it since that time. We have a good rhythm with the tenant. Then they'll submit to the city, and if I'm not mistaken, the city sends that to a consultant for further review. So it does go through multiple levels of review. And one question that's come up from time to time, just to address it, because I know we have some people that might be new to this plan, is there's a lot of potential locations on here, specifically as it relates to ground floor tenants. We never end up with that many. I did a little research today. We have 24 office tenants at Bridge Park today. We only have 12 signs. And of those tenants, 4 of them are what I would call retail type office users, dentists, doctors, co-working spaces. So typically we're not giving out a sign unless you lease a full floor. So that's all I have, unless there's further questions.
Questions? Thank you, Matt. We can jump to, any public comment we can jump to deliberations. Warren, you want to start us? Deliberations?
Yeah, I think it's fine. If we're not changing the consigned code at all.
Correct. Yeah. Can you turn your mic on, Warren? Can you turn your mic on?
Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Everything's the same. It just gives you more flexibility as far as colors and so on, or?
Yeah, it's the same master sign plan that you've seen before. It's just including this block. This block's currently not covered by the master sign plan.
Oh, okay, great, okay. I looked at the signs, I didn't see anything I objected to, so, okay, great. I support the application.
I support.
Temperature? Check.
Yeah.
Head nods? Move to motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Way.
Yes.
Ms. Harder?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Matthew. All right. New cases, Dublin Village redevelopment at 6800 Federated Boulevard and 6711, 6815 Dublin Center Drive, case number 22050 INF, informal review. This application is a request for an informal review with feedback for the development of attached townhomes and multifamily residential with structured parking. The 8.17 acre site is zoned Bridge Street District, Sawmill Center neighborhood, and is northeast of the intersection of John Shields Parkway with Village Parkway. Chris?
Good evening, thank you. As the commission may recall, the Bridge Street District, there are 3 steps to the development process. However, there is an optional step for the applicant to solicit an informal review with non-binding feedback. With that, tonight, the applicant is requesting an informal review and non-binding feedback. Here are some discussion topics for this evening, and these include land use and number of units, the street network and circulation, parking, building height, massing, architecture and character, open space and fee in lieu, and general site layout, framework, and phasing. So Dublin Village is located southwest of the interchange of I-270 and Sawmill Road. The 54-acre development is roughly bordered by Bridge Park Ave, Village Parkway, Tuller Road, and Dublin Center Drive. Dublin Center was approved in 1987 with most of the 400,000 square feet of commercial development constructed in the late 1980s. Some history on the Dublin Village Center. In 2013, the Edwards Communities apartment development was approved. The 4-story Podium apartment building included 324 units and a 325 space parking structure. It also would have facilitated the creation of John Shields Parkway and other public streets. Though this development was approved, it was never constructed. So since 2013, other cases in the Dublin Village Center include the Village Center West Facade and Revelry Tavern patio expansion in 2021, and the AMC Plaza improvements in 2014. So if we zoom in a little bit, the site location is nested within the Dublin Village. The primary development area is starred here and is located northeast of the intersection of Village Parkway with John Shields Parkway. Identified on the location map to the left is an existing image taken north of the AMC Theater. You can see here in the foreground the large surface parking area. In the background is a AEP overhead extension. That 50-foot easement bisects the site north to south. Here, a similar image from Village Parkway at the intersection of John Shields Parkway. You can see the site to the right, Village Parkway going north-south here, and a stand of existing street trees. Moving south along Village Parkway, here you can see the loading area at the rear of an existing inline retail center, kind of a landscaped area south or below the power easement. And then in front of the AMC Theater looking east, this is an existing plaza, Revelry Tavern you can see in the background. Zooming back out a little bit, the site is located within the Bridge Street District, Sawmill Center Neighborhood District. The district has its distinct neighborhood standards. The framework plan for the neighborhood standards is highlighted here to the right of the page. Also, the Bridge Street District Street Network, which is part of the city's thoroughfare plan, is highlighted here. It shows future connections and block pattern layout. The site is highlighted in black. So a high-level overview of the proposal. The applicant is proposing 2 7-story apartment buildings with 278 units, 2 3-story single-family attached buildings with 14 units. It's proposing the extension of John Shields Parkway and McCune Avenue, as well as other expansion and modifications to existing surface parking lots. So as a reminder of the discussion topics for this evening, the presentation is kind of framed to follow these discussion topics. As I mentioned, there are townhome and podium apartments proposed, 292 total units. The townhomes are A and C here on the diagram along Village Parkway. B and D are the podium apartments. Both of these building types are permitted within the Sawmill Center Neighborhood District. Here you can see the street network existing and future streets overlaid onto the diagram, showing the street families of the district connector in orange and the neighborhood streets in green. This block pattern is showing the but the typical block pattern layout. The maximum block size within the Sawmill Sciota neighborhood district is 500 feet. And here is the proposed parking illustrated in the diagram to the left and outlined in the table on the right. A total of approximately 971 parking spaces as part of this development. 474 of those are included in the 2 podium parking structures labeled B. Additionally, some surface parking for the apartments labeled here C. The modification of the lot in front of AMC here D. There are existing spots here, but this would expand that parking lot and remove that plaza shown earlier. And then E highlights a new parking, or a new surface lot rather, around 116 spaces at the rear of an existing inline retail center. So the applicant has provided the type of apartments and general mix and number of units, but we are unsure and can't calculate the needed parking. Additionally, they are meeting requirements to provide parking spaces for AMC Theater and other tenants as part of this. So here the code does, though, provide standards for parking based on use and type. Multifamily, a studio or 1-bedroom would require a minimum of 1 space per dwelling unit. A 2-bedroom would require 1.5 space per dwelling unit. 3-bedroom, 2 spaces per dwelling unit, with a maximum for the multifamily of 2 spaces per unit. Additionally, for theater, a space per 4,000 maximum capacity of the theater, and for general retail, 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Typically, with a development of this complexity, a parking plan would be provided later in later steps. So the as mentioned, the applicant is proposing two building types, a podium apartment building. Their two podium buildings are 7 stories. The maximum permitted by code is 4.5 stories. Here you can see the podium's a section of it looking east. Not shown are the 2 townhome buildings. The applicant is proposing 3-story buildings. The maximum permitted by code is 4 stories. The applicant has also provided massing of the proposed residential development. Here in orange, you can see the townhomes fronting Village Parkway. This would be consistent to what's on the opposite side of the Village Parkway, towns on the Parkway, which are currently under construction. These are also 3-story townhome residential. The north and south podium apartment buildings will be 6 to 7 stories, depending on grade. There's a little bit of grade change, and are U-shaped residential 5 levels above 2 levels of parking. This is a view looking southeast with AMC in the background. And then here is an opposite view looking to the northwest. You can see the south building closer and the north building in the background. This is more of a 6-story elevation, and you can see some grade change going out to Village Parkway, out to the 7-story elevation. Additionally, the applicant has provided precedent imagery showing modern architecture interpretations with brick, glass, and metal. This is larger residential. There is retail shown here. There is no retail as part of this proposal. Additionally, no precedent imagery was shown for the podium piece of this. The applicant has identified approximately 15,000 square feet of on-site open space, kind of highlighted in the upper left-hand piece of this slide. The applicant has also identified 36,000 square feet of potential future off-site located kind of to the bottom right of the graphic. By code, the 292 units proposed would require 58,400 square feet of open space. If the applicant couldn't provide this, the reviewing body may determine that the payment of a fee in lieu can be provided in open spaces. Additionally, the open space must be publicly accessible. It sounds we categorize it. So to kind of review and elaborate on the discussion questions for the commission this evening, we're asking if the commission is supportive of the proposed land uses and number of units. Is the commission supportive of the proposed street network and circulation? Is the commission supportive of the proposed parking? Is the commission supportive of proposed building heights? Is the commission supportive of the proposed massing, architecture, and character? Is the commission supportive of proposed open space or fee in lieu? Is the commission supportive of general site layout, framework, and phasing, as well as any other feedback the commission wishes to provide? So with that, thank you. I and other staff are here for questions. The applicant is also here in attendance tonight.
Questions for staff?
I have a couple questions. Can you tell me, based on the Bridge Street Code, the difference between a podium building and a corridor building?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The difference between a podium building and a corridor building within the Bridge Street Code?
So within the Bridge Street Code, the podium would have parking below with development above the parking. Are you looking for any other clarification?
Well, again, I'm looking at the code and the graphics, and it looks in a corridor building, it has parking underneath partially the building. I always thought that the podium was just one level of parking and then a building on top, and that it appeared the corridor building allows for multiple levels of parking and then a building integrated with it. Is that an incorrect understanding?
I may ask Nikki to provide some expertise on this.
Yeah, so in terms of the difference between the two, the corridor building would either allow for no parking and parking to be in a separate location, or it would allow for parking to be within the building. And when it says within the building, the way that that's been interpreted in the past is not that it would be an open podium, but that it would be to the rear of the building and lined facing the principal frontage street.
So the reason I'm asking this is because the graphics that have been submitted show 2 levels of parking. I'm not sure if that's a grade-related thing, and not just 1 level. So I was thinking, does that kick it to this other category, which you can go higher in terms of stories? So that's what I'm trying to figure out, is if, are we characterizing the building correctly, which then drives how many stories you can do?
Yeah. So from a staff perspective, I believe we absolutely are characterizing it correctly. The code provides latitude to make a determination on building type. Staff makes that recommendation to Planning Commission. If you were to find a different conclusion, that could certainly be explored. But it is not, I think the code recognizes that, you know, design is not always going to look exactly like the form-based code, so we have to make a determination basically as close as possible. And so the character of 2 stories of podium parking underneath additional 5 stories of residential is most similar to a standard podium building.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. I had one other question. The property at the intersection of Tuller and Village Drive that is not part of the property. Who owns that corner?
Can you clarify?
I'm looking for my documents. So it's the intersection of Tuller Road with Village Parkway. There's a triangular piece of land. And if you look at the thoroughfare plan, the thoroughfare plan appears that at some point in the future, Village Parkway would tee into Tuller, which would then, I can see that property then being reserved for right-of-way of a future condition. And I'd like to clarify that, if that's the intent, and then if it's not the intent, who owns the real estate that's there now?
So this is owned by the city of Dublin, and it's part of the right-of-way. And if Tina has any other input on the future of the streets, I'd invite her up.
Thanks, Chris, and good evening. There is right-of-way in that corner, as you were just identifying there, where Tuller Road intersects Village Parkway and Tuller Road at a, sort of a curved intersection now. You're also correct in pointing out that that would be an opportunity to straighten those roads up and get it into more of the format of the Bridge Street District by having some perpendicular intersections there in the future. The city has taken a look at a study in this area that would help to make some of those decisions for the future.
Thank you. And the reason I bring it up was twofold. One, if it wasn't going to be a line, there's the potential open space or open space corner to be dealt with. But if that goes away, then now we have another corner condition that doesn't exist right now in terms of thinking about the development and how the development relates to that corner. So I'm hearing you say, yes, that's the direction that the plan is taking us and that we should consider that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Chris, question on, how about this? On the drawings, there, it's referred to, diagrammatically referred to and called green space, but of course, I think we're really talking about open space. If you don't mind going back there. And then while we're staring at this, help me make sure we understand it correctly. I don't know that all these parcels necessarily are open space. Is that correct? Help us understand the definition of open space here.
The publicly accessible piece of it, accessible from the right-of-way.
I'm sorry, unpack that again?
So defining the open space is open space that is publicly accessible from a right-of-way.
Is that, and forgive me, I guess maybe I'm mixing definitions at this point, but is there something about length and proportion of the open space?
Are you addressing sort of the different types in terms of pocket plazas versus pocket parks versus greens? That
Maybe, yes.
delineation?
And there are different typologies for those types of open spaces. These precedent imagery or how they would categorize as the open spaces or green spaces here weren't provided by the applicant or unclear to staff at this point.
Do they have to, so everything Sad just articulated, I guess I'm just trying to be certain we understand it. So I agree. I mean, there's a certain amount of, this is all the pervious surface, if you will, right, on the site. But does that necessarily qualify it as open space?
With the amount of material provided, staff would not anticipate all the open space shown here or identified meeting the publicly accessible and other categories of open spaces that the code requires.
Got it. Thank you. Other questions?
About that too. There's a certain requirement for open space. Okay, does that space count as part of the requirement? If there's no money in lieu of all open space, okay, is this open space? Is this all that space count as their open space?
So again, at this level, it's unclear if these spaces and all of them or which ones would meet that. As this will refine to a concept plan, we would want to further clarify and outline which of these spaces would actually count. And not all of them would count towards that open space calculation, only the ones that meet the requirements.
Okay, I guess we need to know what that is, right?
Correct, and that analysis hasn't been done at this stage in the informal review.
It hasn't been figured out at this stage?
During this informal review, no.
Okay.
I'm going to ask the same question. So the proposal on this slide has the 15,000 square feet and the 36,000. Put a legend next to that. That's 15,000 square feet of proposed blank. Open space?
Yes, and I would invite the applicant up to maybe describe a little bit more of their intentions around these open spaces, because again, at this point, with the material provided, it's unclear to staff what would be in these open spaces, the programming, what type of they might try to apply towards.
I think that's where we're all getting.
And we'll ask that. I was looking, I suppose, for the definition a little bit so that we could anticipate and go down that line of questioning. Additional questions?
I do have a few questions. What's the current parking there now? Do we know?
That's not been provided at this point, but that would be something that we would need in the concept plan.
Because one question, so I'm sure it's a big topic, is traffic. And I'm sure the traffic studies and as we're increasing pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic on Toller and Village Parkway, and even if John Shields cuts through the space, I have some concerns around that because there's already very heavy traffic there now. And then also pedestrian safety from getting from the AMC Theater down to the Bridge Park area in that district. Again, I think it's a phenomenal idea. The area definitely needs the help. I just think there's some logistical questions like that we need to vet before we get too far along.
Within the Bridge Street District, a traffic impact study is not required, as one was done basically with the rezoning of the Bridge Street District, or the initial rezoning of the Bridge Street District. But circulation and safety are definitely in the purview to think about and consider, and I think feedback would be well received.
And then one other quick question, the other previously approved development, what was the, how many stories was that, or what was the height of those? I apologize if I missed that.
It's a 4-story.
Thank you.
And that 4-story includes the podium level?
Correct.
If relative to the podium building type versus the building type you referred to, Mr. Way referred to, what's the height limit on that one? 4.5. Also 4.5 stories? No.
It would have been 4.5 stories. And this was in the 2013, so this was part of the Bridge Street District.
But I guess I'm going to, Mr. Way cited a different building type that's not podium, that was a corridor building. What height does that allow?
The corridor building maximum height is 6 stories.
Got it.
How much?
6.
Are there stipulations? Are there other stipulations with that building type?
So I think as Nikki was indicating, the parking, as we've interpreted that, and kick me if I'm wrong here, was that you're not to see the parking, it's to be fully wrapped. And that's not what is being proposed with this particular development.
Got it. Understood.
All right, just a couple things. Okay, 4.5 story is what's allowed in the district, right? Okay, if they want to do 2 rows of parking, isn't it appropriate then they could go down underground 2 stories, correct?
I think that is correct. Below grade parking.
Yeah, okay, and the building could be 4.5 feet high, 4
The code is only counting stories above grade.
Yeah, so if they to meet the parking requirement, they can just go deeper like a lot of places do, right? Okay.
Okay, I had one last question. So we're reviewing a submission tonight. There's the document that says scope of work, and it has a black line, which in your presentation, it's a different color line, but are we looking at, is that the site that we're commenting on tonight, which includes existing buildings and proposed buildings and parking? And I just want to make sure that as we're discussing this, I want to know that is all of the site that's identified in the black line what we're supposed to be commenting on as a total piece? Is that the submittal?
That's a great question. The applicant has indicated that this would likely be part of a multi-phase redevelopment. I think the most refined piece of this concept or this development concept is that area, the A, B, the townhomes and podium apartments, as well as the modifications and expansion of parking fields. I would invite them to ask if they would like feedback on any other pieces of this.
And my comment was the parking is so intertwined with all of this that it's hard not to think about this in total. And again, thinking about it, it's just a piece of a bigger something, and that's challenging to understand too. So I think we're getting into applicant questions. So.
Any more questions for staff? Would the applicant care to step up?
Good evening. My name is Aaron Underhill. I'm an attorney with Underhill and Hodge at 8000 Walton Parkway in New Albany, here representing Stavroff interests. With me this evening is Matt Stavroff, one of the principals. We have some other members of their team as well and owners, and Michael Fight of F2 Companies, who is spearheading the effort on the multifamily component here in the townhomes. I think this discussion was very interesting to me here because, Bridge Street is its own beast, and especially procedurally, there's multiple levels of review here, and we're at a very early stage. And in fact, we had gone to the trouble of filing a concept plan application, and talking with staff, we thought a little better of it and thought maybe that was even too far at this point. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of moving parts here. And I think when The Bridge Street District and the visioning plan was adopted back in the late 2000s, I guess. I remember attending a lot of meetings and being out at a lot of late nights then. I know this was one of the drivers of that effort was a long-term vision for this property. Fortunately, I think for the city, over time, as the center has deteriorated due to a number of things being economic conditions, the rise of online retailing, et cetera. Unfortunately, at first, the project became a dinosaur. The fortunate thing was that the Stavroff Group came in and purchased the property and have really stabilized it. And for those of you who know the Stavroffs, they've lived in the community for years and generations, and so have a special place in their, in their vision for not only looking at the short term and what is good for their business opportunities, but also keeping their options open for the long run. And I think we can all agree that whether we're at the highest and best use of the property right now is certainly debatable. I think we wouldn't be here if we thought that that was the case. But they have done a lot to stabilize the center, provide some activity, and really clean it up and to where it really is an amenity for the community today, but one they hope to improve on. And this is the first of what we believe will be many steps in order to accomplish that goal. So, Mr. Way, your question is well taken. I think what we're really looking for tonight is the feedback on the residential components. Inevitably, I think when we come back with future, more formal applications, it's almost like pushing a water balloon, right? We're going to push part of it and put a development there, but it's going to create a need to, it's going to bleed off into other areas of the balloon, right? And we're going to provide parking that will likely, in the long run, if you take a longer view, be temporary. But we're going to need to accommodate this development and existing development and try to take this in stages. I mean, we expect to be before this group many times over the next many years with different aspects of the redevelopment. One of the things that happens when you're dealing with something other than a green field, and even though we have this urban feeling area now, going from Bridge Park on one end to this other, what I would call a bookend with the Dublin Village Center, is we have had a lot of green space that we've been dealing with not a lot of existing development in the way. A lot of what's been driving those developments has been the existing street network. Here we obviously have that, and but we also have a lot of existing buildings with a lot of useful life left. We have business decisions such as how long should leases be renewed, those sorts of things. So as you can imagine, this is very complex. And so while we're at an early stage, we have also undertaken a lot of effort in terms of coming up with the right land use, trying to maximize a smaller amount of land by going vertical and leaving open opportunities that we think will probably be more realistic to come to fruition with more residents living here in a walkable area. And so I think this is probably the first time, I've been up here many times talking about different projects such as Toller Flats and the Pulte project that was approved in more recent times and is getting constructed, about how in those areas retail and entertainment and restaurant sorts of uses weren't so viable, but they're clearly viable here. And we believe that the balance of the remainder of this site will largely consist of those uses, and it will be driven largely by not only market conditions, but useful lives of buildings and lease terms expiring, et cetera. So with all of that being said, we want this to be a collaboration, and that's why we're here in the informal sense rather than even at a concept plan stage, which is still a very high level sort of review. But we wish to get your feedback and the questions that are presented to you this evening. We worked with staff to try to identify what was important to them and us to get understood, so that as we move forward, we can check some boxes. So with that being said, I want to invite Matt Stavroff up here to say a few words, and we know we're here to listen more than talk. So after he speaks, we'll be happy to tag team a Q&A session with all of you. Thank you.
Matt Stavroff, 6689 Dublin Center Drive. And I think Aaron summarized it pretty well. We've been a part of the Dublin community since 1981. It's a long time. We really love this place. We've seen it go from really a suburb that was created by issues that were happening in the city of Columbus and the Columbus Public Schools to just a blossoming, incredible community. We've owned the Dublin Village Center. We call it Dublin Village now. But the Dublin Village Center at one time was an incredibly vibrant place. I remember going there even in college back in 87, 88, and you go to the movie theater with a date, and they had all kinds of, you had Italian pizza oven or whatever that was called. You went to Just for Feast, which is kind of an edgy, it kind of created a new category for itself that you see today in Foot Locker and some of the other superstores. But it was a great, great place. It always lacked visibility. It always lacked proper access for retail development to succeed long-term. And as soon as you could go to the other side of the road, all the tenants went to the other side of the road. And that's what really happened. And the trade area is so great that it was able to succeed for a long time. That AMC movie theater was one of the best in the entire country. And before, pre-pandemic, it still was one of the best in all of the Midwest. And it was best in Central Ohio. That says a lot for a lot of the disadvantages it still had and had to face. But that's how strong this location is. We bought this in November of 2009 amidst total turmoil in the market conditions. That was a housing crisis, the financial crisis, and it was an absolute disaster. It was half vacant probably, and of the 50% of tenants that were in there, I'd say half of those were non-compliant, illegal. They're doing all kinds of stuff, and they weren't paying much in the way of rent. And we spent 2 or 3 or 4 years just trying to figure out what we wanted to do, and that kind of led to working with the Edwards companies, and we did get an apartment community approved. Unfortunately, at that time, Dublin did not have an agreement in place with the schools that allowed for the type of revenue necessary to provide the public infrastructure to support the type of prescriptive development that this code calls for. It's a really special code. It's neat, it's flexible in some ways, but it's very prescriptive in other ways. So we've cleaned this thing up, and we're very proud of it. If anybody tells you it's not vibrant today, they haven't been over there. We are the community, really. We see people from Dublin and the Northwest Columbus, and we're serving those people. Our tenants are serving those people every day. I'm proud of them. I love them. That's the only reason we want to move this through expeditiously, is because we have obligations to these people. They have businesses, and some of them could be impacted mostly positively, but there'll be a small subset that may not be able to be with us, and it's our responsibility to work with them, and we plan on doing that. We also have, just to keep in mind, we have to honor certain legal agreements that are in place. We have a reciprocal easement agreement that governs different types of things, but the main one you need to realize is that we have parking obligations to the AMC movie theater. Who knows what that will look like long term, the movie business, but they've been great to work with, and the deal we made with them to do a renovation in 2013, 2014 allowed us to breathe new life into Dublin Village. And so great relationship with them, but we have an obligation to them for parking. And so really, I would just say to you, we are here to collaborate with staff. This is the best staff I've ever worked with. And I would say that it's not close for me. I think they're the best. They listen, they respond, and even if it's a no, it's reasonable. And I really appreciate them, and I appreciate it, and that's the truth. Many of you know I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it, so that's a compliment. So in closing, I would just say this is a great opportunity. We have even though it's doing well, it's underutilized. We've got 2,200 parking spaces maybe, Kevin, is that around correct? For 400,000 feet, that's a lot of parking. We've got a sea of parking, and we've got a lot of people that want to be here. There's infrastructure that will not only benefit our property, but it's going to benefit the community. It really will. Excited about it, excited to work with you all and to receive your feedback. Thank you for your time and the opportunity.
I'll just wrap it up. I think that Mike fight will be up here quite a bit to answer some of the specifics, but I know some of the technical questions that were being asked. It is true that at this stage, it's difficult to get into that level of detail, what the open spaces will be. They're really bubbles, right? And typology of the building, I thought that was a great question. I'd never really thought that through. We just aren't there yet. And possibly, maybe it is something else than what we think it is, but we'll investigate that. But the intent here was not to leave those questions unanswered. They just haven't been asked yet. So just keep that in mind. And as we roll up our sleeves to continue down this path, we'll answer those questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Matt. Questions?
Well, I think, well, first of all, congratulations on what's been accomplished to date. Although we do all remember, many of us remember, I mean, I can name those restaurants, the Boulevard, you know, et cetera. It was quite vibrant. Went down and now it's come back up. The dilemma is that we're being asked to sort of comment on one part of something we don't know about, and presumably you may not know about it. So to what extent, at this point, can you provide any, I'll call it holistic, for lack of a better word, concepts of where this goes from here?
Lance, I think what you're asking is that what do we have planned for the entire development? Because you're not really looking at just 5 or 6 acres, you're looking at 50 or something like that.
And to put a finer point on it, you know, what happens after these is the rest of the development, this anchors this for your future development, and are the next buildings going to be taller, shorter? Are they going to be, you know, what? Right. And we're going to create, we all collectively are going to create some sort of precedent here without a vision of right. What else is going to happen.
So we have many, many global land plans for the whole development. And maybe we could share those with you that would provide a little clarity, but I can't say with any confidence how closely we're going to adhere to the plans we would share with you. But we could share some, and they're really well done. And it gives a guide, but what we did 7, 8 years ago, we planned for a lot of retail, and that's changed dramatically. So now we're looking at more living and hotel and restaurant. So we just don't exactly know, but that is a very good question because we talk about it internally all the time. But one of the challenges is that we have these existing conditions, and these improvements have a lot of value. They're being used every day. The community's coming and they're customers of these businesses, but some are better than others, and so some are performing at a higher level than others. So I think the cool opportunity here, you mentioned the challenge, but kind of the cool thing is like how cities, like older cities, formed over time. They're quirky, they're messy, they're not planned perfectly. And you may have an existing building and then a brand new beautiful one, and the street's a little curved because it had to go around somebody that owned a property that they didn't want to sell or be part of the development. So there are all kinds of challenges, but I think that this can be really eclectic, and it can be a combination of existing buildings where you maybe improve elements of the architecture, and maybe you add to the buildings, or maybe you take away from amidst our new buildings that we're proposing. That's the best I could answer it right now. I don't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could build on that just a little bit, and again, I appreciate what you just said. I wrote it down, the eclectic nature of this. I think this can be eclectic, but there's got to be a plan for it to be eclectic. It can't just, I don't think we feel comfortable letting it just happen that way. But if we know that roads aren't going to be perfectly straight and they have to go around things, well, maybe that's fine, but there's an end game, right? So you keep that curved road, but that responds to some kind of new development opportunity. And I say that because, you know, we have to follow the documents that we have, and the thoroughfare plan that's been done is, you know, again, those are big picture ideas. The Sawmill Center Development Standards Plan, those are the things that we're using as our guide. And so when we look at the plans, And, you have this the potential future development block that's in there, who knows what it is, but it's bigger than the other blocks. It may not fit within the road grid. So it's difficult for us then to understand where you're going with this. But I have to say that, again, compliments to taking this on and having a vision for the future. I think you're headed down the right road in terms of mixed use. So, and I say, I think residential is appropriate here. I think there could be a lot more residential because I think people living in the center is going to really change the dynamics of it. And I've felt that for years. I remember when you bought the property and I think you had talked about things that you wanted to do with it. And I was like, yeah, that's going in the right direction. So I'm supposed to be asking questions, right? I was getting to that as a question. So the question was, as we work together on this.
Say, don't you agree? And then it's a question.
What's that?
Just say, don't you agree? And then it's a question.
So I guess it looks like you're kind of already starting to vary from the planning documents that we have. And I think back to Lance's point that is it the intent that we're going to, it may be a little messy, but we're going to end up with a plan ultimately that follows the documents that we've been given that have been the vision for this area, down to streets and open spaces and all of that.
Yeah, again, those are excellent comments. Appreciate the compliments, and your concerns are our concerns. They really are. I would just say that we can share with you, we can show you a bubble plan, we can dial down a little bit, but I don't know. The market's going to dictate what we do in the future, as you know. What's kind of neat about this is this John Shields Parkway is imperative that it gets through our site for our site to be great. And it's also maybe not imperative, but it's kind of important. If I was down on the river owning Bridge Park, I want to continually improve bringing people to and from off the interchange there, because I go down there on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I drive there because my office is at Dublin Village, and I cannot believe, number one, how many people are there. A lot of excitement's been created, and the people that have been involved in that deserve, hats off to them. But a lot of people are coming from outside of Dublin. I walk around and I know a lot of people in Dublin. I rarely see anybody I know on the east side of the river. That's a good and a bad thing. I mean, and I guess I don't know what it is, but I can tell you they're coming from outside, and to get them down there more efficiently, over time we're going to have traffic issues, and I know that they're probably working on them. But yes, we've got to do maybe we've got to do a little better job maybe of presenting that next time, but I can tell you we don't know if it'll.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going with the question is, there's elements to this proposal that are not necessarily embracing the plans that we have that have been set for this area. And so we just want some comfort level that you're paying attention to those documents, like John Shields Parkway. That's a major through street.
Right.
And so how do buildings address that street and make it a frontage street? Right now, your U's are turned so that the open end of the U is facing it versus another, a more solid edge. And the intersection with Village Parkway and John Shields is a gateway. So how does your development responding to that as a gateway? How does the architecture respond to it? It's those things I think we're looking for as we, again, this is very high level, very preliminary. So I'm just trying to get back to, I've got a code with some really good elements in it, and I really want to see your ideas as you move forward responding to those issues.
It's good. I would just say that if you had a history, and I'm trying to look over here to see, maybe, Jen, you have been around long enough, but we've already gone back and forth. So I don't want to waste any good energy over talking about the code, because I pay attention to it, but I don't pay attention to it. You know what I mean? Because we're not in a field. We've got existing improvements that have value, and it would be a shame for us to say we can't be better, we can't be great, because we have to perfectly comply with a code 100%. We're not going to be able to do that, and you know that. I mean, you know that there's going to be some waivers and things, but I think we can get there. I really do. I mean, you're addressing buildings on the street. We talk about it all the time. I mean, we definitely will be doing that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, sorry. I say, I really appreciate what you're saying. Again, I think we're heading in the right direction. Just for me, and I think what we're all kind of saying is that to give you the full, I mean, I think we definitely want to proceed, but I think there's some just things we need to understand a little bit better about planning. Again, going back to the pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic in the area is a huge concern, I think, and just not really fully understanding that now. I think we'd want to understand that next time or when we meet again. I do have a question though. Does your pro forma, I guess, is the heights a deal breaker? The height of the buildings, the number of units? Like if we were to recommend, maybe it's, I don't know, just 6 stories or 5 stories. Does that change the?
I think that's a question for one of the most talented guys I know, Michael Fight, who ran the apartment division at Edwards for a long time, and because I just think he can answer it better.
You set me up, Matt.
Thank you.
Name
and address, please.
I'm sorry?
Name and address.
Oh, Michael Fight,
Thanks.
1550 Lakeshore Boulevard, Columbus. As we're all talking about, we're very, very early on in the process here. And the pieces and parts that shape the building aren't just parking or pro formas or those types of things. And I don't know if you recall the image board that was up there, but we would encourage you not to get fixated on a number, which is 7 right now. There's a lot of nuances to the site. There's about 10-foot grade that runs across there. So one of them is basically in the ground. The other thing that isn't black and white about the building is it doesn't go from the bottom straight up. There's a lot of articulation that we're discussing and planning, so the building will step back in a lot of areas. We believe the townhomes on the front of the project, on the western edge, being 3 stories is a good step up to the building. The parking garages themselves being 2 stories, which is, it's a ramification of the requirement that Matt mentioned for the theater and other retail spaces. And that's why we have 2 podiums. The bottom one's basically for other people and it's public. And the first one is for the residential component. So we're building parking lots, parking garages, podiums for other uses that we're planning for in the future that may come, that will need the parking. So the building itself being 7 stories, I saw people's look, it's bigger than what's supposed to be. But we believe with the proper articulation on the building, stepping back at the corners. I don't know if you can pull that image back up, Christopher, but those images that we put on the image board were specific. For instance, the bottom middle, you can see that building. That building is probably 7 stories as well, if not at 6.5, but it doesn't feel that way because it's not straight up. There's patio experiences on the top in the first part of the building, steps back, and there's a different architecture on components of the building. So the overall feel for the building isn't, oh my God, it's 7 stories. It's just, like I said, we encourage you to embrace letting us show you what this building can be, because we believe it can be beautiful. At 7 stories, I just think that's a number. 6, you could have a 6-story building or even a 4.5-story building that meets code by height that isn't beautiful. We're trying to make a beautiful building here, one that's memorable. And like I said, we encourage you to let us do that and show you what that can be. Not get scared of 7. Just don't be scared of 7.
Michael, maybe you're the right guy for my line of questioning. So we started to unpack sort of concern about what is articulated as green space in your document, I think open space in our document, right? There's a certain amount of open space. Green space and open space mean different things, right? The requirement is actually an open space requirement that provides, it's not just impervious surface. It's not just planting bushes.
And the diagram, I think, does what it's supposed to at this stage. What's concrete and what's grass. And the questions are, I believe, rooted in the, what open space are we getting that we can use that doesn't just have grass and shrubs on it? I think that's where that is coming from. And we are striving and will provide open space that is usable. There's a diagram that we showed up there that talks about a future park a little bit further east than where our project is. But as you mentioned, it's important to think of the bigger picture here. And the bigger picture is the 50-some acres, not this 5 alone. So that diagram there, not that that's exactly what we're going to do, shows a very substantial open space in the middle of the big project. And our intention is to provide those. We've also been in conversation internally about that beautiful plaza in front of AMC, which this diagram shows us wiping out and putting it into parking spaces. Well, that might not be the best idea. We might, designate that plaza, which is today private, as part of our public open space system. We're thinking of what you're thinking about, I can tell you that.
So
we see John Shields Parkway as being an open space connector.
Agreed.
We see a north-south green space in front of Revelry and all the work that the Stavroffs have done to date on the back of what was the Farmore building. If you've been over there, you've seen it. It's an outdoor space, outdoor plaza. The intention isn't just to solve open space requirements on the apartment site. Our intention is to think bigger and global, so everything's connected, everyone can use it.
So give me a moment to wrap the entire sort of line of questioning together, right? So the open space is one commentary, which the worry right now, the way it's diagrammed, you and I both know that those are sort of beds, right? It's not thoroughly thought through. And of course, open space is an integration with the city fabric. I think Mr. Way is starting to touch on something too, right? Conscious awareness of the city desired plan and the thoroughfares and how the streetways, right, starts to become an integration with the fabric. And Matt, I agree entirely with you. It's hard to entirely predict the future, but here we are, a planning and zoning board who does exactly that, right? And you're a developer in the midst too, who does exactly that, and thinks far enough out in a concrete enough way, but loose enough way that you can start to breathe into it effectively, and we can all be satisfied with an end result years and years from now. My concern generally is, and maybe I'm articulating this as much as anything else relative to the question about the open space, is while I see productive use of your sites and even forethought about, we got to solve for some other things, like we're stealing parking from AMC, we got to solve for that and those types of things. I don't necessarily see it meshing with the city fabric at present. There's a few parts to that, right? We could articulate there's three sides of the building is basically two stories of parking garage, which doesn't make it especially sort of pedestrian oriented in this district that we want to be pedestrian oriented. The thoroughfares, some of them don't connect through, right, or aren't sort of represented fully in the way we want, and or the open space tethers as one of those two isn't really forethought robustly in a way that really starts to breathe life into the fabric of the city, which tethers in every which direction around this. So maybe that's a question about. Right. Obviously, you guys are striving for wonderful architecture at some point. The open space is clearly demonstrating that you might be overbuilt at present and pressing off of this, which at times has its merits. I suppose, right, and of course you're growing vertically, which requires a waiver from us in one way, shape, or relative to this building type. I suppose. My question really is, what are we getting that meshes well? How is this really adding vibrancy to the pedestrian nature of this district?
Well, I believe,
How are you dealing with the streetscape robustly?
I believe a major connector of green space and parkway, both pedestrian and bike, is John Shields Parkway. And it's our intention to continue what has been done to the west, right through our site. We worked with staff probably 3 or 4 months now to get an exact location of the road and how it can run through there. And as Matt said, there's existing assets that you can't just knock them down. So we were very creative, we think, along with the help of staff, to get John Shields Parkway through there. We believe McCune Avenue or Boulevard, I can't remember what you call it, but that isn't just a road to get through these 2 apartment buildings. It's a very pedestrian-oriented streetscape that has parallel parking on both sides, sidewalks that are probably 10 feet, street trees and those type of things. So we have 2 major east-west pedestrian corridors running through not only the entire place, but just the apartments itself. From a north-south standpoint, although it's a power line easement, we believe a pedestrian circulation can easily happen through there from AMC and the southern components up through the apartments, up to what could be a future retail use that you see on the drawing there. So we have a north-south connection. Other than that, there's going to be pocket parks that are going to be scattered throughout this thing. It's just, at this stage, we show you one little diagram, and it's got green on it and white on it, and it doesn't look cohesive maybe because it probably isn't as good as it can be. That's why we're here. It's going to be better than you're looking at it tonight. We're looking for feedback on those 8 points, I believe, that were up there on the board. And I'm hearing, show us your open space and make it count. I'm hearing that. Show us connectivity into the rest of the community, which we plan on doing. It's discussed internally all the time. We're talking a lot about the building height and the architecture, so that's very important. So when we come back to you, we'll answer some of these questions, and hopefully, we'll get through the rest of the 7 today.
We will, but we'll go through all these, the commission will go through all these when we get into our deliberations. Rest assured.
I just have a couple questions. Mr.
Okay, Mike, when this plan was developed, as Matt and you both know, we had some highly paid consultants, and I sat in many, many, many meetings. And one of the things they talked about was letting the Bridge Park get too big. Okay, what do we envision for Bridge Park? Do we want something that looks like downtown Columbus or Chicago, or do we want something that looks like Dublin? And the green space, I remember a consultant saying to us, you don't want to give up an inch of green space because we've zoned this to the minimum, okay? We want it to look not like downtown, okay? That was one thing. Also, how high do we want the buildings to get? And we said 4.5 stories maximum, okay? Do we want the next one to be 8 stories? Do we want them all to be 7? So it gives us a different look. And so I'm wondering, and the other thing is, as my colleagues said, which I really agree with, we haven't seen the whole development. And maybe we're going to get another block of 250 unit, 8-story buildings. And that's a completely different look. So I don't think you can prove to me that we need to go higher than 4.5 stories. You can put that parking underground, okay, 2 to 3 stories. I mean, there's lots of parking garages like that. And I appreciate your effort. And I think both of you, I know both of you, and I think you're straight guys and trying to do the best for Dublin, but it's our job to do the best also. And I can't imagine going higher than 4.5 stories, and I can't imagine giving up any green space. And no matter how beautiful the buildings are, I think one of the things that the consultants emphasized, and we've heard from our astute planners, that we want street-type buildings that encourage walkability, not 8-story buildings. We want things that face the street, that people can relate to. And so far, I think we've done a pretty good job with that. I think the developers have. So those are the two things that I feel pretty strongly about. And I think that your effort is commendable, but I think you asked for our feedback, and my feedback is that
This is great feedback. Because this is where he and I argued a little bit, in that Edwards, do you remember the Edwards plan that you guys approved?
Yeah, but it wasn't completely approved. It didn't go to final, if I remember correctly. It was not. There was still a negotiation to be.
It's platted.
What? It was platted.
Okay, if
but
anybody's going to speak, they have to speak from the microphone. And if I may clarify, the site plan was approved for that site.
The site
there
plan was.
That which is now equivalent to the final development plan.
Yeah, the site plan was, but it wasn't final development. Okay.
No, it doesn't matter anyway. So I wasn't trying to get you at all.
No, I know.
What I was saying is that the one thing I didn't love about the Edward, I love the way it was on the street. Every side faced a street, kind of like what you guys are talking about. But it was one gigantic building, and it was 4 stories over one, and it felt like every other building I see in every community that's been built today for the last 10 or 15 years. And I said, why can't we be different? Why can't we be interesting? Why do we all have to build these gigantic buildings that cover every inch?
I agree with you, Matt. First of all, it's a different time now. And I think you're right. I think we keep getting better and better. And I think you're probably going to be better than the first plan. But I think that it was emphasized to us that we don't want these tall, gigantic buildings. We want something that looks like something. When we first developed, that's why what do you call it? It's 4.5 stories is what the maximum.
No, I was just wondering who emphasized that to you, that you wanted it.
The consultants that we sat in meetings with Mr.
Are the consultants developing the city for you, or are you guys?
Well, that's why
we aligned. To be fair, the city aligned around said plan.
Yes.
Right. So
yeah, we had. I'm not arguing, but I'm just saying that I appreciate your effort, but I think that we have to look at what the code is, and the code was there for a reason. And when Mr. Edwards came in, that was a different plan, and I think it's applied.
Mr. Supelak.
Is that
Mr. Fishman.
The feedback is we don't want to give up.
I just, in keeping with our usual structure, I wonder if we have moved from, if we are moving from questions for the applicant to deliberations among the members, rather than perhaps.
Okay, you're right.
Yep.
I have 3 questions. I've spent a lot of time in your area and have always loved it. With 5 kids, I am at that movie theater dropping off people and so forth. And also just shopping around that area. And I know what you're talking about when you're saying how you're weaving through. First question, do you see when you put this building in that I'm not going to have a visual to see maybe in different directions and so then I'm not like weaving through the area the way I am doing right now? So I'm asking, is the building, the way it is right now, do you feel that it's going to be a large obstacle to see further down the road as another place for me to go? Walking, driving?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we sit on that Revelry patio looking west.
Okay.
And it is a beautiful view going down that John Shields. The road is beautiful. The landscaping is very nice. And you can see as far as you can, God gave you the ability to see. So I would imagine you're going to be able to see through ours the same way, but you're probably going to see the Revelry patio that's undergoing renovation right now as we speak. So that road is going to curve.
Okay.
And that creates maybe some challenges, but I think it's quirky and kind of cool.
Okay.
And interesting.
And then, is there any option to thinking about condos in the area instead of apartments?
I think that'd be fine. That would be fine.
And
I
then,
think Pulte's doing that to the west. and they're doing about 100. And we're interested to see how they're going to do. I think they're going to do great, by the way. But we'll have to wait and see. As you know, we're entering into a different period. Maybe.
And a quirky question, if I may. So I've noticed, being in the area, that I'm happy to have the car dealerships around, but I see that sometimes they put their excess cars, can be a lot, on, is it your property that they put them on? And then is that going to be a problem down the road as to when they have a large number of cars coming in, where those are going to go?
They do park on our lot often, or they used to before there was a car shortage.
Right.
I guess we're just going to have to tow a lot of cars. No, I don't think that'll be a problem at all. We're able to control that, I think. We're friends with most of the people. Most of it's been super temporary where they're in a bind.
I'm not so much worried about you as much as them being able to bring in that number of cars and having a place to keep them.
It's a problem. It's a problem. But that it really is their problem. And
Right.
they should have maybe planned a little bit better.
So then I didn't know if it was going to come back to us to talk about.
I don't think so.
Thank you.
I think the business is probably changing, the automotive, more just in time. You see that with some of the newer car companies. Maybe that's the model that some people, that's out of my area of expertise. But that's what I would imagine.
Thank you.
Additional questions?
I have one more question. I probably should have asked this one first. And it relates back to your initial opening comments about this is a 20-year process, or maybe that was Mr. Underhill's. Is it your intention to redevelop this entire center over that time? Redevelop everything?
No doubt about it. So, have you guys, you been to Bal Harbor in Miami? Well, it's one family, one development that keeps gentrifying and gentrifying and gentrifying. And it's now, and it's been for some time, probably the nicest shopping center in the world. It's got the highest sales per square foot of any. We're not likely to be that. I'm not saying that we will, but we've been here for 13 years now. We're like a teenager owning this thing. And we typically, as I look back, when I came up, we own assets for between 7 or 8 and 20 years, which I can't believe, but I think we could own this for a long time. That's why I'm hoping but there's been so many wham bam type developments around here. I've been around a long time. I remember that, what was it, the shops at River Ridge? Is that what that's called?
Yeah.
I mean, they had to get it done right now or everything was going to fall apart. I got to do it right this second. Well, right this second, look what happened.
So
we're not in a rush. We want to get it right as much as you guys do. And we do appreciate the feedback. Good question.
So likely over that time, it will go from largely a one-story shopping center to a multi-story mixed-use development, the entire. So I'm trying to paint.
Imagine that 20 years from now, that people won't be completely shocked at what is there. And will there be a remnant? I hope there's a remnant left. I hope there's somewhere in there's a remnant. We don't lose the tide back to what it was, because that's what makes things really memorable, really awesome.
I just wanted to draw a little vision about where you saw this going.
I think this is I wish I could tell you it's a 3-year process, and I think it could be. All we have to do is go out and get partners, just start knocking stuff down, throwing stuff up, and you got a 50-50 chance that the market tumbles, and then you're stuck with it. I know that if we have the time to work on internally and then respond to the market, but this infrastructure is huge. You get the infrastructure in, you start with this project, you get momentum. We got to get out of the gates. You really do. And I think great things will happen. And you may say, well, that's just talk. I invite you to go out there and really look at what we've done. Look at the landscaping, look at the pot. Nobody does that for a 30-year-old strip center. They don't put pots out like Easton. People don't have the benches. They don't do with the clock tower. They don't have a sign. There's no reason to do it. Go across the street and look at the potholes right now. Then go out in ours, and other than one little area that we don't park in, you'll be hard pressed to even find one coming out of winter. So we care, and we'll get there. I just hope it's not 30 years. I hope it's 10.
Mr. Suplek, before we get into the deliberations in which we'll be doing all of the listening and none of the talking, I think I want to summarize what I think I've heard, and then you can correct me where I'm wrong.
Go ahead.
I think the land use seems to be satisfactory, and I would assume if done properly, the building height's an issue and that goes to density, but I'm assuming given the density that's already approved there today versus now, that's probably generally okay. And I think the other thing we'd like to establish, though, is making sure that John Shields Parkway, that is an important component for us to nail down. Are we on the right track there? And that's going to drive a lot of other decision-making. So I hope we have your support on that. I don't know yet. And we hear you loud and clear on the building heights. We'd ask you to be, as Mike and Matt said, open-minded on that. And I think one thing about that's made Dublin great is the attention to architecture. The struggle I've had in almost 20 years coming here is how do you articulate that? And it's not an objective thing, it's an art form, right? And so if you're open-minded, we understand you're probably leaning towards not liking that height, but if you're open-minded to a discussion on that with some of the things Mike mentioned, like stepping back the height, et cetera, we'd love to have the opportunity to prove it to you.
Thank you, Aaron.
I'd like to add one thing regarding the height, because it's a very important thing. When we first started this process, I had the pleasure of going on top of the roof of the Farmore building, which is interesting. And so, I don't know, it's 15 or 20 feet tall, the top of this building that's over there. And it was eye-opening. The view from that height across the west down to the river valley, it was beautiful. So the height, from our standpoint, we want to try to maximize as many people that can enjoy that view as possible. And limiting it to 4.5 stories or whatever it is takes a lot of views out of that ability. And, Warren, trust me, we're going to make this building great. It's 7 stories.
Thank you, Michael. Additional questions? Closing the presentation part. Sorry, public comment.
We did receive one public comment that was shared with you with your packet, so I wasn't going to read that. That's already was included in your materials unless you feel otherwise. Otherwise, I don't have any additional comments. So.
Do we have to, forgive me, do we have to read that in?
No, because it was distributed with your packets and the materials were accepted. It'll be part of the record.
Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment here tonight? Seeing none. Deliberations? Someone want to lead in? Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for bringing those up.
I can start if you want.
Feel free. Again, 7 points of the discussion here.
I'm just going to go through these just really quickly. Firstly, I just want to say we need to have this conceptual plan for the whole, whether, just conceptual, so we can start thinking about it in total. As a commissioner, I'm just having trouble piecemealing this, and right now that's what I feel we're doing. So the proposed land use and number of units related to the residential, I have no problem with that. You've heard my comments about the street network and circulation. I think there's a bunch of work to be done on that. We certainly need a parking plan, and I think that has been discussed several times. The proposed building heights, is a two-sided coin. Building heights can relate to other future buildings around it and all make sense. But when you evaluate a 6 or 7 story building across the street from 3-story buildings, across the street from 1-story buildings, it's like, how is that going to fit in? So I would urge you to think about the edges of your development and how it transitions to other development around it. And I think the townhouses is a perfect example of you trying to do that. So just keep that in mind. Proposed massing, architecture, character, I don't think we're there yet really to comment, except the organization of the U-shaped blocks that you have, if that's the way you continue to go, of having a building face on John Shields that makes that into an important street, I think is important to me, and I think supports the Bridge Street plan. I really think there needs to be a lot of work on open space and clarifying open space. It's not understandable right now. And just the general layout of the 2 residential blocks, I think is headed in the right direction. But when you answer the questions above, it's going to help clarify that, so.
I'll talk. Okay. Am I supportive of the number of units? I guess I am. I don't see a problem with that. However, I'm not supportive of varying from the code. So we talked about that enough. The street network, I think, is okay, but I think it's really, really important. You've got a lot of work to do to make the building street friendly. And as I said, we've emphasized previously that we want this to be a walkable community. That's what it's all about. People coming out of their building and enjoying walking. The proposed parking, I'm a little worried about the theater. I guess I can ask the question of staff, does the theater have enough parking? Is that going to be a problem? Because they're flowing into their property right now. What?
It has enough parking now. As this development concept is refined, that would be something we'd be looking forward to reviewing to make sure that those requirements are met from a code perspective. The other question would also be for the applicant if they're meeting their shared parking needs or parking providing.
Okay. I hate to see a lot of street parking. There's several communities throughout Central Ohio where that's always a problem. You've got cars parked on both sides of the street. You can't find a parking place. You know what the answer is to 4. The massing in the architecture, well, we really haven't really dealt in that. It looks good from what I see. Support of fee and lieu, I am not. Is the Commission's Board of General Site Layout? Not really. I think Mr. Way made some really good points. I think, again, we want the buildings to face the streets for foot traffic and so on. But other than that, I think the use is fine, and I think these are honorable guys doing it, and I'm thrilled to see them do it. My worry is if we deviate from the code, Mr. Stavroff might not be the next developer for the rest of the site, and they're going to say, hey, you approved 7.5 stories, and we think that that's a hardship if you don't do it for us. So that's always a problem, is precedent. So, but on the other hand, I drove it today, and I thought, wow, a 7-story building there is going to change the character of the building. That's just my opinion. But I think these guys are honorable guys. I think they'll do a great job. They're sincere. But I think the code is the code, and we had a lot of expertise helping us with the code, and we were warned about that we really want to keep the green space, we want to keep the height, we want the pocket parks, and so on, because that's what makes it Dublin. So that's my only comment.
Oh, I 100% agree with you, and I don't want to belabor the building height, but especially when you're driving up John Shields from Bridge Park, you're up a hill. So I think the height's going to be even more exaggerated because you're seeing it from even lower. So I think that's something we need to consider. I agree with everybody. I think generally supportive of the idea, but Mr. Fishman, I think you made a great point earlier to say we don't necessarily want this to be an extension of Bridge Park. I think Bridge Park is great in a lot of ways, but it's not really Dublin character. And I think the density, we want to be careful not to set a precedent of density like we did at Bridge Park and these other areas, because as you said, this precedent that we set is going to grow and grow and grow. Then it's going to be like, well, you did it here, we can do it everywhere. So I think it's very important. I think you made a great point. We just want to iterate. We want to get back to the code and what Dublin is, and not making an extension of Bridge Park, but make it Dublin.
Mr. Chinnock, do you have Any specific commentaries relative to the 7 discussion items?
I think I've said most of them. I think, again, generally I'm supportive of the idea, but I feel like we're kind of considering this in a very small bubble. And I think we need to look at the bigger picture here before I can really say affirmative to any of these comments.
Duly noted.
Thank you. I also agree. I think it's a great opportunity that we have, and we're so happy that you're thinking about this and moving in that direction. We want to go slowly as well as much as you're saying, and we appreciate that you're thinking about that too. I like the idea that you're considering an opportunity for condo use. If it is apartments, it would be interesting to know how much those would be down the line. I think the land use, I've said that would be fine. I'm a bit concerned about the number of units, and if you proceed in that area, I think contacting the school district would be advantageous to you. The commission, are we supportive of the street network? I think I'm fine. I think there's a lot of work that has to be done with that, but I see what your vision is. The proposed parking, I think people like their cars covered, so I like the idea that you have the stacked parking. I think about that for safety too. It seems like it's close with the theater, and that walkability to that is also very important. I do think that it's a very large buildings that you are bringing forward, and could look very high just walking around as well as driving around. So a bit concerned about that. And then the open space is very important, and just how you're going to connect people and walking across roads. If there are some creative ways we can get people to move around very safely, I think that would be very helpful in that line too. Just talking about the height, I think it is, again, pretty high, but also I look about safety. I don't think we've had one fire over at Bridge Park, and things seem to be fine with that, but I don't know what kind of fire trucks, if we even have ways of getting people out, and maybe thinking about that, if that seems to be, if you're going in a higher duration. So overall, I appreciate you all coming out. I did catch the article in the Dispatch, and I think anytime communicating with the public and getting them motivated, and that will inspire some conversation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. Mr. Schneier.
I'll try to be additive, generally support what fellow commissioners have said. I think that I've thought about this. I think that this and Metro Center are the 2 greatest opportunities for redevelopment. And so I would encourage you to think very broadly and differently about this project. I think this has just unique opportunity because of its location and because of its size. In deference to my fellow commissioner, I'm totally supportive of not following the code at all if the project merits it. But it's an opportunity to make a statement for the next 20 years plus in Dublin. And I think if we look too narrowly on one parcel, I'll tell you, I'm not hung up on building heights, just to pick out a building height, because it's just too early to say that's wrong, or that's too high. I don't know, I just want to see what else is there. But if I have any, I'm encouraging and encouraged, if I have any pushback at all, go back and do something incredibly grand, that because you control so much of this property, that makes it the next place that people want to come to in Dublin. What that does to the existing, I recognize you have existing assets there. It's not our business necessarily to tell you economically what to do with those existing assets, but boy, it's a grand opportunity. If I were to drill down on one thing that I'm not likely to personally bend on, it's the fee in lieu. We're all about not open spaces, but green space as a subset of open spaces. So anything that captures that. But once you do that, heights, density, uses, I think it's all there for the taking, as long as you can present us with something that has the right wow factor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schneier. I hope I'll be brief, but that's a little bit unlikely. You guys have been in here before. I think we all know that complex, was well-intentioned years ago, fell by the wayside a little bit. You guys have done a good job breathing life into it. Obviously, the residential coming up the hill and getting more and more enmeshed and closer is going to be a great benefit to you all, right? And of course, this is no different. I think Mr. Way touched on it. Early residential mixed in here has so much merit. So everybody across the commission sounds like is on board with the use. I think Mr. Schneier actually said it well right? The code's in place for a reason, but at a certain point when we're seeking things outside the code, right? We recognize when it warrants it, when they are worthy of those things. And so there's a certain amount of, right, supportive of not following the code if the project merits it. So i.e. earn it, right? We can potentially go there with you. I think just let's earn it. Let's really, really earn it. And I think some of the biggest fundamental flaws we keep touching on. One, we don't want the open space punted elsewhere. The fee in lieu is not good. We could probably be on a certain portion of us on board with centralizing something, but again, all that demands that there's a broader plan, right? There's some consideration to the broader district, not just yours, but how you're meshing with the cities, right? the city, right? And I touched on that. I worry generally about certain things like the height and the massing, right? We could comment on those, but they're not necessarily the discomfort I have. The discomfort I have is sort of something. Mr. Way touched on something I touched on. I still don't know that this becomes a very, right, esoteric, inward-facing, right? Your center boulevard is where all the pedestrian action is, right, where the houses face each other, and then it sort of builds away. And the other sides of the building are ostensibly walking next to a parking garage, and of course that's not going to be it's just not going to drive any traffic. So there's ways to help all that and consider it more robustly so that the entirety of the district, which is in large part your district, right, starts to really become residential. But right now I'm coming down from, as it stands in the drawings, I'm coming down from a 6-story building. I'm spending all that time getting down. And of course, right, I'm probably going inside to my car and away from the site, not down to the street, right? Aside from those doors that do let out onto the street, which isn't actually that many. That could, right, that's a configuration issue. That's an open space issue. That's a layout issue and where the buildings face and address, right, the city thoroughfares. It's in part too, and I know you already have lots of commercial use on the site, but of course there's merit still to putting, a lot of your examples still had mixed use commercial downstairs, so I don't have to go elsewhere. I don't have to go down and elsewhere, which is a jaunt. I just go downstairs. And once I get my ice cream, then I start to walk around and, right, sit in the park and the thing, right? It starts to build on itself in a really intentional way. And I think that's the level of that fabric, that pedestrian nature of the district, and how do you generate that energy really impressively, not just place the units, way up high on a podium. So I think that that and a wealth of consideration there starts to, how you mesh into the fabric, including, I hate to say it, Michael, I appreciate you recognizing, right, the streets, the east-west streets come through, and there's a lot of sensitivity to John Shields, and you guys have invested interest in that, so do we. But I also think we also probably have to solve for north-south, so that some of your drive aisles are, I mean, there's a wealth of dead ends, there's a wealth of barriers, there's a wealth of things that make it really not about the city, make it about, just this site and interacting with the site, and it's a very, not inviting, but closed, right? It's a citadel of inward-facing kind of experience. So I know that's a little loose and out there, but I think that and a wealth of these considerations start to drive it towards a really meaningful integration with, the city and this site. Street network needs help. Pedestrian level needs help. What was number 4? Proposed building heights. That's potentially the building height and/or the massing is a sort of earn it. Fee in lieu sounds like it's a clear no. Which means open space needs a lot of help, right? I was starting to touch on it and leading the witness on the fact that a lot of those spaces are just beds. They're not right now angling towards open space, right? And all this will go towards a much better, much more holistic project that we can all be proud of. I had one, Michael, I do applaud the examples, I do applaud the stepping back and the effect that's having on the massing, just food for thought, but of course that bounces up against a number of these other concerns. Did I miss anything? Context matters. Yeah. Perfect.
Can I ask for some clarification? If the commissioner's comments about the need for a larger framework also apply to comments regarding the street network and any deviations from that?
Yes. Head nod? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Follow-up questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all you guys are doing. Moving on. Thank you for waiting. Case number 4, Higher Ground Montessori School at 6000 Memorial Drive. Case number 22-031, AFDP, Amended Final Development Plan. This application is a request for site and building modifications to accommodate a daycare within an existing building. The 1.21 acre site is zoned Planned Unit Development District, Muirfield Village, and is northwest of the intersection of Memorial Drive with Muirfield Drive. Mr. Hounshell.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening again. This is an application for request in review of amended final development plan for the Higher Ground Montessori School. This site is highlighted in yellow on the screen and is intersected by Muirfield Drive to the north, Memorial Drive to the west, or east, sorry, and Cromdale Drive to the south. This was built out in 1979 as an office building and is zoned in the Muirfield Village PUD, but defaults to the standards of the suburban office district. So the site is fully developed with parking to the west and north and vegetation along the west property line and to the north of the parking lot between Muirfield Drive. And access to this site is solely provided off of Cromdale Drive to the south. So shown on the screen are existing conditions. You can see the view from the south, Cromdale Drive, and then the view from the west parking lot. These are areas where construction and the proposal will will be maintained in these open spaces, and there are some minor modifications happening to the building, which we will discuss as well. The parking lot is being modified, and you can see the section that is being modified from the drive access to the south, and the existing sign that will be removed with this proposal. So this is a comprehensive application through an amended final development plan. We'll start with the site plan and the improvements that are happening throughout the site. So this is a daycare use that is filling the existing office building. The applicant is proposing 2 outdoor recreation areas which will aid in the daycare use. Those areas are highlighted in green on the screen. The first and the larger of the 2 is 3,470 square feet, and that's located south of the building between Cromdale Drive and the building. And then the northwest side of the building is 1,870 square feet, and that would be protruding towards Muirfield Drive. These outdoor recreation areas are regulated within the suburban office district, as there are specific use requirements for these spaces. One of those requirements is that they be located to the side or rear of the principal building. As the site does have 3 frontages, the buildable area for these outdoor rec spaces, as this use is permitted, would be within the red area located on the screen. This area is currently built out with the current drive access to the remaining parking as well as parking bays. So there's very limited access to build these areas on the site without changing and redeveloping the site entirely. So the applicant is requesting a text modification for the location of these 2 areas. As this is a PUD, text modifications are procedures that are permitted. If this were standard code, they would not be permitted, but because of this PUD, they would be modifying the text to allow this use to make these modifications. So the modification is for the location of both of the outdoor recreation areas moving forward of the building to the north and to the south. And those distances would be approximately 40 feet to the south along Cromdale Drive, and then approximately 8 feet towards Muirfield Drive. With the construction of the south recreation area, it would remove 4 existing parking spaces. Shown on the screen are the requirements for parking with this use. The applicant would be meeting the required parking if this were approved. And finally, the applicant is updating the lighting plan. They'll be utilizing the existing poles throughout the site, as well as adding some wall packs to the west elevation of the building. The applicant should continue to work with staff to finalize the lighting plan just to assure that all zoning requirements are being met. Shown on the screen is the landscape plan. The applicant is proposing to remove 11 caliper inches of protected trees on the site, and we'll be replacing those with a mix of evergreen, deciduous, and ornamental trees. There is play area screening, which is provided and is a requirement per the use-specific requirements for those areas, and those will be screened with evergreen and deciduous shrubs. The applicant still needs to provide trees, which is required within the suburban office district requirements, and it would be 1 tree per 30 linear feet of fence. So the applicant should continue to work with staff to finalize the landscape details here. Shown on the screen are the proposed play equipment for both of the areas. Both areas will have the equipment shown on the screen. The toddler area on the right will be in the smaller section, which is northwest of the building, and then the children's house area is to the south. One of the requirements within the code is that the colors of these items be subdued in earth tone, so that is a condition that they assure that those colors do meet this requirement. There are minor modifications to the building. Shown are the west and north elevations. There are 2 modifications. Only one was listed in the staff report, and I'll go over the second in just a minute. The first is for an elevator addition to the internal portion of the building, where you can see at the center of the screen on the north and west elevations, there's a slight protrusion into the existing roof line. This will be finished with wood shake shingle and lap siding to match the building and does not extend the height of the building. Additionally, you'll see on the west elevation in the bottom right corner, the applicant is adding a new window for one of the classrooms And that is an item that was not identified in the staff report, but this is the only item that would be added other than elevator to the elevations. And finally, the applicant is proposing a new ground sign and removing the existing sign. When removing the existing sign, the applicant will be required to restore that area. This sign is being located at further north of its existing location at the intersection of Memorial Drive and Muirfield Drive. It's 15 square feet in size. It's a double-sided non-illuminated monument sign with 2 aluminum posts. One of staff's recommendations is that the applicant provide a monument base clad in stone, as this is consistent with what we've done with other signs within the city. And then it does have 2 colors, which you can see on the screen. Those colors are consistent with the existing sign that's out there currently. So as stated, this application does have a minor text modification for the location of the 2 outdoor recreation areas. As stated throughout the presentation, this text modification allows the user to adapt to the existing conditions of the site and utilize the existing building and parking on the site, while also adhering to the requirements for outdoor rec areas within the suburban office district. And staff has reviewed the application to all applicable criteria and are recommending approval of the minor text modification and approval of the amended final development plan with the 5 conditions shown on the screen. I am happy to answer any questions there may be for staff. Otherwise, our applicant is here to address any of your questions. Thank you.
I'd like to ask the applicant a question.
Let's do staff.
Oh, staff only? Okay.
Sorry. We'll get there.
I guess I can ask the same question. Has this gone through the Muirfield Design Review Committee?
I believe they've been working concurrently with them through this process.
Has it been accepted? Do you know?
I would look to the applicant. They're nodding yes, so I'm going to assume yes.
It has gone through and you've gotten their approval?
And please state your name and address for the record. And if you could turn on your mic as well, sorry.
Is it on now? Yeah. Lionel Craft, 1767 Moose Hollow. We've been working with Muirfield Association, and they have approved, after several revisions, the current site plan with only 2 conditions. One, that we adhere to the colors that were shown in the playground for both the slides, Rockwell holding stations, as well as the canopy. The visual that was shown on the canopy shows tan, but it will actually be hunter green to match the slide as per Muirfield. And on the signage as well, they have approved that with the condition that we meet the setback requirements, because that sign has a slight different location. And with those 2, that is approval from Muirfield Association.
So you have a full approval from them? Great.
And that's for fence, sign, playground, and site plan.
Okay, so any
So we did individual applications with them.
okay, any exterior modification has been approved by Muirfield?
That is correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lionel. More questions for staff?
Yeah.
Mr. Schneider.
Maybe this is handled by Muirfield. The sign is metal, not wood, and all the signage there seems to be wood. Is that something we should be concerned about, they should be concerned about?
So the signs, we would review the signs to what our standard code calls for, which is not, it doesn't require that the signs be wood. It allows for that flexibility in the material. Muirfield may have different requirements. I know they've reviewed the sign and approved it as it is currently.
Right.
Based on its location, yeah.
Yeah, one thing I would encourage everybody to remember is that the city has its zoning and design standards and development standards, and Muirfield has its. Muirfield doesn't enforce the cities, and the city doesn't enforce Muirfield's. So
Customary that when, in fact, this is one of the first buildings to be changed in Muirfield, commercial buildings, but when they are, it's customary that the applicant get approval from Muirfield before we approve it, okay? So if they said they did that, I'm fine with that, and they approved the metal sign, I assume, right?
Yeah, thank you.
I just have a quick staff question about the clarification of the 11 trees that will be taken down. Are they the ones that are along Muirfield Drive? They're very large trees, and I didn't know if there was reason with that. Thank you.
I'm happy to answer that. Let me pull up their preservation plan, and I can confirm that for you.
I assume Muirfield approved the landscape plan also. Okay.
My question's been answered. I think I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Can I just ask a quick question? And I don't know where I'm going with this, but could you just show us where the existing sign is and where the new sign is? I didn't see any labels on the drawing that labeled signs.
So what you'll see on the screen, and if you could follow my cursor, so where my cursor currently is the existing sign. So the sign is located within the right-of-way. They cannot utilize the existing sign as it is currently larger than what they're allowed. So that's what comes into new sign, new compliance. So their new sign is located here at the intersection where my cursor is. It's about 20 feet off of Muirfield Drive and 35 feet off of Memorial. And this is to also stay out of some of the easements that are located on the site, but the minimum setback we have is 8 feet. That's the city requirement, but they would be meeting that on both frontages.
I wasn't following the numbers. I'll do better next time. Thank you.
Does that meet code?
Yes, it currently meets code.
Okay, and they said it was approved by Muirfield, right?
Mr. Hounshell, while you're there, the sign that's at number 22, do we know what that is? Up and right. Yep. Stop sign. Could be.
I want to say that's one of Muirfield's signs. That's what I believe I've seen before. I don't believe it correlates with this site. Yep, please do.
Welcome back, Lionel.
It is a Muirfield neighborhood sign.
Got it. Thank you. Additional question for staff?
Yeah, I have one quick. Does the two canopies classify as accessory structures? Do they fit within the code, or they exceed the square footage allowable? Or is it not an accessory structure?
So the canopies, are you asking more their height?
Well, the height and the square footage seem.
Yeah, so they are, go ahead.
They're not an accessory structure. We would not consider that to be. That's just part of the building.
Thank you.
Any others? Would the applicant care to speak any further?
Just as a thank you for your time, and we appreciate working within Ohio. We're excited to enter Dublin. Our nearest closest school is in Powell, so we're excited to enter into Dublin as well, given the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Lionel. Any more questions for the applicant? Proceeding then to deliberations. Do we have, there you go. That's all right. This is all one vote? No.
No, you'd have a motion to approve the minor text modification with the condition, and then a separate motion on the amended final development plan with the listed conditions.
Got it.
The landscaping plan, does that hide the play equipment? It didn't look
So
like.
it hides, the screening that they're providing meets zoning code requirements. The only item that really they need to adhere to still is the color and making sure that it's subdued. It's not, doesn't have logos on it. It's not bright green, bright yellow, which they've confirmed that it will not be.
Okay.
Chairman, may I have a question on that
Yes.
same? Thank you. If you're going down that One Road Commodate Road, that's the south side, can't you see the swing set or the play equipment from there, from the road? And I was just going to suggest that like maybe an arborvitae, the plant, if that would be something that's more of an evergreen that would eventually cover that.
Yeah, so they're not required to screen the play equipment. They're required to make sure the color is subdued. So I believe part of their landscape plan does include additional trees, whether they're, I don't know if they're arborvitae or ornamental, but they do provide some on the south side.
And they said that, you said that Muirfield approved the landscape plan, right? Okay. That's all we can ask for.
I'm familiar with this area because my office was across the street for years, but never realized there was a putting green in that little building. But there's a
Effective screening, by the way.
there's a daycare center like just west that has equipment that you can see from the road. I think this is a great project, and I have no
I
problem
don't think
with
you
it.
can see it from Muirfield Drive, can you?
No, you can see it from Crowndale.
Yeah, but that's back in the residential, yeah. This one's right on the corner of Muirfield Drive, so that's my concern, that you're a really visible place, which is good for you in Muirfield, and so I know when the other one went in, I happened to be on this board too, and also on the Muirfield board, and I remember that was a touching point. They said that since it's not exposed to Muirfield Drive, it's in the residential, it could be exposed. But this one is on the corner, and it's exposed to two streets, Muirfield Drive and Memorial Drive, which are two main streets. And so I'm concerned about the landscaping. Would that be a problem for you to beef up the landscape?
So I guess to be clear, there are requirements for landscaping, which they meet. So asking for additional landscaping is not within the bounds of what's before you tonight. So they are meeting the requirements. Okay. And again, I guess also to clarify maybe what Thad was saying as well. So Muirfield has their requirements. If they approved it and we had standards that were greater, you would have to meet our standards as well. But since they're meeting both, I think
I'm happy.
I think we're good. Okay.
If Muirfield approved it and we're approving it, it's fine. Then you said Muirfield approved it, they know what they're doing, so.
Mr. Chinnick?
No more questions.
Good. Mr. Hanshaw, can you bring that? Yep, that. Perfect. So again, to be clear, we need a vote on the minor text modification.
Looking for a motion to approve?
Looking for a motion, yes.
Yes.
Is that it?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you.
Ms. Harder?
Yes.
Mr. Shinak?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman? Mr. Way?
Yes.
Mr. Schneier?
Yes.
Yes. Now a motion to approve the amended final development plan with the 5 conditions, correct?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Schneier?
Yes.
Mr. Sublak?
Yes.
Mr. Shinak?
Yes.
Mr. Way?
Yes.
Ms. Harder?
Yes.
Thank you both kindly.
Welcome to Belfast.
Yes, welcome. That is our docket for tonight. We are through to communications.
Yes, and I just have a couple. You did a great job. Great job, Chairperson.
Didn't we all do a good job?
You all did a
Oh,
great.
thank
Gold
you.
stars for everyone. I'm sorry. Very good. So I have two quick things. One is we included in your packet, I think I mentioned at the last meeting about the single-family residential development or design standards discussion that you all have had. We took some feedback to City Council to share what the comments were and what the approach is, and we included within your packet what was provided to them and a little cover memo that just explains the outcome of that, which is ultimately looking at residential development in sort of three tiers that build on each other. So that larger scale, the more streetscape feel to it, and then individual lots and what those residential standards might look like. So ultimately, we'll be bringing something back to the commission. City Council asked that be brought back to the commission to be vetted in more detail. So we're working on putting that together, and we'll be back before you to do a little more deeper dive on that. But definitely take a look, and if you have questions, feel free to reach out to Sarah or myself, and we can definitely talk through what that is. So that's included for your reference. And then the only other item is the Central Ohio Planning Association is hosting a planning and zoning workshop on May the 20th, which is an all-day event, but has different sessions about different planning related topics. So if you're interested in that, it's a pretty nominal fee, but a really good opportunity to meet and see other planning related topics from around Central Ohio and different presenters as well. So you could pick and choose sessions that you want to go to. But if you want to do that, like I said, it's May the 20th and registration is open, and Judy and the clerk's office is registering people. So if you want to do that, please let her know so she can take care of that for you. So that's all I have. Thank you.
And if anybody wants to learn about revitalization of the Mahoning River, they can come to my session.
When is that?
The 20th, Friday the 20th.
Where?
It's at OSU, right? Yeah.
And you're?
Nikki's one of the organizers, right?
He's the keynote.
You were the keynote?
I'm doing a session.
Just not.
Yeah. So the planning and zoning workshop is Friday, May 20th. It's at Ohio State University. It's an all-day event. So it'll be at the Knowlton School of Architecture, which is where the planning school is also located. And then lunch will be at the Blackwell, and happy hour will be at the Varsity Club. So the theme of this is back to school. And our keynote presentation will actually include Jenny Rao, or I'm sorry, the plenary will actually include Jenny. So she'll be talking with directors from across Central Ohio about planning. And then the keynote presentation is going to be on Link Us. So just talking about regional planning and transportation and mobility. So yeah, for those of you that didn't make it to the national conference, it's a great opportunity. And if you want to nerd out with some planners, you can do that too. So
May 20th. That's Friday.
It's a Friday. It's a Friday?
Mm-hmm.
Can you send us an email? I like to go.
Okay, so if you want to register, then you need to talk to Judy because she's in charge of registering all commission members. So.
All right, that's it. We're adjourned, I think. Thank you all. Oh, gavel. We're adjourned.